Hello, everybody. I'm joined today in GTM and the Tofu Bowl with Brendan Short. He's the author at The Signal, former founder, sales executive. Excited to chat with you on all things go to market.
Amazing. Thank you for having me, Elaine. I'm excited as well.
I know we have a lot of stuff that I think we can jam on. The thing I wanted to pick your brain on is you've been writing a lot about micro campaigns. What is your thoughts in general on kind of like what is it, why now? I'd love to kind of give you my thoughts as well, but let's jam on that first.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, like the problem that I'm trying to sift through, frankly, it's like kind of what I'm writing about with the Signal. It's just like processing out loud, like what does go-to-market look like today? What does the playbook of 2025 look like? What I know is the old playbook is broken. I definitely don't have the answers on what the right playbook is today, but I'm trying to find those things.
Is
And
anything
trying
not
to
broken ever?
yeah, exactly. We couldn't sell anything if everything wasn't broken. It's broken, therefore buy my solution.
Exactly.
But I mean, I've experienced this firsthand, and I know like basically everybody that I talk with at this point is like the way to generate pipeline is different today. Like it doesn't work like it did even 3 years ago. I think that there's like a few reasons. There's like competitors everywhere. I think that's part of it because the cost of software has gone down. I think AI, we'll talk about that, I'm sure, is like changing a lot of things, the tech stack required, the personnel who you should hire. And then, yeah, I just think it's like a noisier world. I think like cold outbound email just doesn't work as much. Algorithms from Google and Microsoft are getting quite good. Like the stuff is just like harder to break through the noise. Um, and so this old playbook is broken, okay, or it doesn't work as well as it did several years ago. I think what is working, first of all, I think many things are going to pop up in the next year or two that like don't exist today. So that's like what I'm trying to figure out is like, what are those things? What doesn't exist today? Like I want to be exploring and discovering and somewhat creating so that I can figure those things out selfishly. I do think that there's like little things today that are starting to pop up that are like, it's just anecdotal data. I don't have like, here's very, statistically significant number of data points that I can tell you micro campaigns work. But it's just like posting on LinkedIn when I was a founder, like it just worked. It just like, there's something anecdotal about it that I was like, I can't really quantify the ROI at all, but like, it just works, and like, I get on a call with the head of RevOps from Asana and he's like, I've been following your content for 6 months. And like, I get it. It's like, okay, cool. I didn't even know he was following my content. That's amazing. It's one of those things with micro campaigns where it's like, I don't have data, but I know like in working with clients and hearing from people, um, it seems to be working and it seems to be like hard to replicate. So let me define what a micro campaign is, and then maybe we can go through a specific example that might be helpful. Um, so a micro campaign, like the old way is like go into a B2B database, look at some filters, put those people into a generic sequence. That doesn't work very well anymore. A micro campaign, on the other hand, is like basically what are the things that you care about as a business that most other companies would not care about? And how do you build this tiny little list of people that have maybe engaged with a piece of your marketing content or your content on LinkedIn, or maybe they just bought a tool that your product integrates with, or they're hiring for a specific role for the first time ever and your product is perfectly suited for that role, or you're hiring there, people are hiring for salespeople and like your product helps fractional sales hiring, or whatever these things are. These are like these little data points that don't live in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. They don't live in a B2B database. And so you need to mash together data sets or build AI agents to go scrape for quarterly earnings calls or job postings or whatever to find these like rich data points. And so with that, it's going to be like this little list of 50 to maybe 200 people. And ideally, there's several data points. And one of those data points is like a timing thing. So like they're hiring for salespeople today. That's a good time for me to go reach out to that company. If I reach out in 2 months, they're going to be like, no, I don't need your services anymore. I just hired somebody a month ago. And so you have to action these people this week. And if you do reach out to them quickly, the thing is like those people are going to convert 10 times better than if you're just kind of mass spamming the world. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's funny, people always they always cite the statistic of like 95% of people aren't in market for your product at any given time. How do you find the 5%? And I think the concept, how I think about micro campaigns in the exact same way you just articulated, is like it's a combination of demographic data, behavioral data, and signal, whatever we want to
Mhm.
call a signal, and
Mhm.
taking at least one of each of those three things to combine to create a very small filter of the world. I like that you use timing as also another kind of fourth element. I feel like we need, how they have the frameworks. Sales has gone through everything from, what was the original one? It was Bant, then Banter, then Medic, then
Yeah.
Medpic, then Spiced,
Yeah.
all this crap. We need something like that for how you go and filter an audience for a good campaign. I think we need an
Yeah.
acronym for that. But
Mm.
I do think that there's a timing element there too.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so as well. Yeah, and I think the timing thing, it's like the thing that I think about, the thing that I want, like philosophically, is like how do I how can like fewer cold emails exist in the world? How can there be, maybe another way to say that is like how can there be more efficiency in the marketplace? And so instead of having to send 10,000 emails to book 100 meetings, how do I send 200 emails to book 100 meetings? Like that's what I want to get to. And the timing piece is indicative of somebody that is the most likely to have a sales conversation with you. That's it, right? And so it's like you're using these data points, these little cookie crumbs scattered throughout the web, as proxies of somebody that's the most likely to have a sales conversation with you, to respond to a cold outreach or a warm outreach. And the other interesting thing about this kind of concept of micro campaigns is like if I'm consulting for a company and helping them think through how to build out micro campaigns, it's very hard for me, and like I've been in sales a while, like I'm decent at least at sales. It's really hard for me to come up with these on behalf of the customer. It really
Mhm.
needs to be the customer that's coming up with the experiment. That's like a good Turing test of like, is this a kind of nuanced enough micro campaign? Is like, can a third party person come up with it? And if they can, it's probably not like good enough. So it's like Series A to Series D SaaS. It's like that's not a micro campaign. Like many people can come up with that list. It's like layering on multiple things and saying like they use this technology and this technology. That becomes super interesting. And if they're also hiring for this role, okay, now that list is amazing. And you can see like when I talk with people about this and we're looking at data, whether it's in like Sumble or Clay or just like native data out there in the wild in like a quarterly earnings call script or something, like you can see their eyes light up and they're like, that's a really good lead. It's like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. This is something that now we can deploy AI to kind of scale this idea.
Well, and I think that's exactly right. Meaning you have to have the kind of human ingenuity and creativity piece needs to come into what are those filters that we're going to overlay to create each of these segments. But then the way AI can actually execute this is cool. What comes next? Just having your segment is not even half the battle. It's like 1/10 of the battle. It's actually going, cool. Well, where do these people live in the physical and digital world? How do we get in front of them? What is the right message? Can we actually use some other data sources too to help us figure out what the right message should be? All that kind of stuff. And I think that's where people get tripped up a bit, is like, cool, we have a plan. Now what?
Yeah, totally. Totally. And it's like the content is one thing. I think like also delivering the message. I mean, we're in like a weird place where it's like, even if you have the perfect company, the perfect person, that you're the right fit, like you still got to get in front of them and send them an email or connect with them on LinkedIn or cold call them, I guess. And like, I don't know, those are like tough to do, right? Like these things are like not the trend line of these things. Effectiveness is not terribly healthy. um, and
Say
so
the least.
and so it's like, okay, how do we, again, it's like, hopefully we're at like some sort of at least local maximum of volumes. And then, like actually helpful and relevant messages will start delivering again. I think there's like also interesting ways of like, I don't know, maybe like I would maybe point this question back at you. It's like maybe reaching out to them in a cold email is not the right first move. It's like,
Right.
do we put them into a drip, campaign from marketing or an ad campaign to familiarize them with the brand? Or do we have our executive or CEO reach out to them directly? Maybe that's a better play. Or find a mutual customer and get a warm intro in. Or I don't know. There's like other ways to actually do that last mile thing of getting in touch with them that doesn't necessarily need to be drop them in some sequencing tool and like touch them 12 times in the next 2 weeks. Like, I don't know, that doesn't feel like maybe the most creative idea at this point. How would you think about it from like an ABM perspective, if you have a take on that?
Well, even to step back, it's to your point. So many people treat go-to-market as a blunt instrument. It's like
Mm,
pull list leads, stick in sequencing tools, blast with 27,000 emails. And first off, every audience has a different way that they're going to respond and different channels they respond. Every person within that audience also has nuance. And so it's not like one channel is going to go and break through with an entire audience. But I do think you have to be very nimble in terms of this is where go-to-market execution goes from mediocre to great, is when people are extremely thoughtful around, for this subset of people, what are the channels that they are going to respond on, and test and iterate. But I actually think if you can find those few channels and then be really thoughtful about the when, that timing piece of when you reach out to them, that's how people do really well. I think what we are trying to enable at Tofu on the ABM side is cool. It's probably going to take 3 to 4 channels. So go and figure out what is the channel mix that you want to go and start to drip your message and get in front of them. Some of it's going to be more for brand awareness. Some of it's going to be more for education content. Some of it's going to be further down the funnel when they're considering your product or others. How do you make sure you're getting in front of them on the right channels at the right time with the right message? And I think it's hard to do. It's great to say. It's also funny. We were just talking about this yesterday. We're finding so many people are buying not even just tofu, it's buying tools right now because they're like, that is what we should be doing. But the gap between what they're able to do with the current team infrastructure processes in place and what they should be doing is so far, no tool is going to bridge that gap. And that's where it's interesting. And I actually really like people and tools that take opinionated views on how things should be done, meaning literally come in and being like, hey, every campaign you're going to execute is going to be 50 people or less. We're going to go and map out right now using AI to help us. What are 20 things that matter to our business? Like one of the things for us that was kind of like that interesting, you wouldn't have guessed it, but I could tell you, is people who do repetitive webinars, at least 1 to 2 a month. Very
yep.
good use case for a product like Tofu. Now, you wouldn't have given me that signal, but I can go and use AI to find, okay, who's doing bi-weekly webinars, and let's pull in the content and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Amazing. Yeah.
that's
Or how
what
do
I'm
you go
seeing.
find like what are the webinar tools that are most relevant? And if in a job posting they're hiring for people that are mentioning familiarity with this webinar tool, it's like,
Totally.
okay, great. There's like an interesting company list to go after. Um,
Totally.
yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I also think to that point, like I don't know. I definitely don't have the answer here, but like that, I do think that AI is like fundamentally changing so many things right now, at least in this little SaaS bubble. And like the type of people you should hire for go to market and the tools to like go to market feel like pretty different in kind of this AI era. And it's something that like again, I definitely don't have the answers to it, but as I'm thinking through it, like I don't know, like from first principles, it's like, what team do I need to execute this playbook, and what tool stack do I need to execute this playbook? And like those things look pretty different than they did in 2020. And like if I think about 2025, like if I'm a Series A company thinking about building out my go-to-market team and building out my tech stack and my strategy, like looks pretty different. And like I don't know, it's I'm glad I'm not in your shoes building software right now, because it's like I don't know, this stuff's moving so fast that like it's hard to understand like who am I even building for, and like what does the world look like in 3 years. Yeah, I don't know if
Well,
you have like a response to that.
what's interesting actually is it's not even just what team do I need, meaning like what titles should I be hiring for? What we find across companies that look similar from a go-to-market perspective, people with the same titles, their aptitude for AI varies so
Mm,
wildly, like shockingly wildly. And that is where I think we're going to see some of the biggest bifurcations in companies that are figuring out how to leverage AI as a force multiplier and those who aren't. And one thing that I think people haven't incorporated yet is, how do you add this as part of your hiring process? How do you make sure that you're testing this in interviews? I don't have the answer to this. I just know people need to be doing it, because we'll find people with the same titles, similar stage companies, similar go to market channels. And one is like super savvy, gets it immediately. And the other one is like hands off, afraid, don't want to touch it. And that's going to be a problem for companies.
Yeah, totally. I think that's right. I mean, yeah, it's hard. I mean, I'm even like, I'm like, feel like I'm studying this stuff and it's like I'm forcing myself to do these things. And I'm like, I don't understand half this stuff. Like, I feel like I'm by no means an expert. But once you start to kind of see what is possible, it's really hard to unsee it. And I think once you
Yeah.
realize like, oh, these things, like there's just kind of like a mind shift in how I think about, at least in my world, kind of prospecting, top of funnel, demand gen, whatever, like building pipeline, even like upsell, cross sell, retention stuff. It's just super different. And there wasn't like a single aha moment. It's like kind of been this little journey of like hacking together, hacking with the tool, or doing like different little experiments with companies. And just like little by little, I'm like, oh wait, there's like really interesting things that you can do that like now pop up as I have conversations. So I think that, to your point, it's like finding, I don't know if somebody like looked at my like LinkedIn or something, like there wouldn't really be a way to see that on paper until you like ask them like, what projects have you, how have you used AI? Like, tell me about a project like you have shipped and like what went well, what didn't go well. I think that's like probably a good question to ask people at this point, if you want to be testing or doing AI, and testing with AI is probably how I would say it actually. So I think this stuff is all like pretty experimental still. But it's like, man, I can't really be more bullish on it, to be honest.
Well, and you mentioned the whole mindset shift thing. This is also funny, and I find myself getting caught in the same trap. Is I'll be we're creatures of habit, right? And I'll be doing something that I've done before, and it'll be kind of manual, and I'll spend 5 minutes. I'm like, why am I doing this? And then
Yeah.
just immediately chuck it into Anthropic, ChatGPT, whatever. Like a great example last week, we participated in like a digital event. They had like a demo, and they gave back a list of 1,200 registrants. And they had titles all across the board, a lot of messy data. And I was like, oh, I've got to filter down who do we even care about in this list. And so I was kind of manually doing some rules in Excel. And I was like, wait a second, this is what AI is excellent at. I stuck it in to OpenAI. I had it filter out for our ICP. I had it append data that we were missing, and then leveraged it in Tofu to go and create emails to follow up. It was like magic, but I had to think about it after 5 minutes of me banging my head against a wall. And I don't know how we get over that hump. And I think there's even more psychological shifts than that. But I know you've thought about that too. So what have you seen in terms of kind of mindset shift and what we need to do there?
Yeah, again, I think that's like a great example of just like rewiring our brains on how to think about this stuff, and also like where AI is good and not good, because there's also places where it's definitely not good, where it's like high stakes and you don't want any hallucinations or you don't want any mistakes. Um, yeah, I mean, again, like I'm by no means an expert. I'm still trying to kind of like figure this stuff out, but I think just having, um, Perplexity, Anthropic, OpenAI on my phone, on my desktop, and like trying to use them, even if it's like, this might actually take me longer to use OpenAI to do this task versus me just doing the manual way like I've always done it. I'm going to learn something and then be like, okay, this was a good task or a bad task for AI. Um, I think that like that's helped me learn like where it's good, where it's not good. Like writing blogs, it's like, it's not actually that great at it, but like helping me as a brainstorming partner with like how to title an article, gives me 10 article titles and like 9 of them are garbage, but one of them's like, it's okay, I could reword that a little bit. That's actually good. It's like, okay, you got to just play with these things enough to like try to get a sense for like where they can be helpful. And then, I mean, I'm also just looking at this as like I'm learning a new skill, basically. It's like I don't, being able to talk to an LLM, give it clear instructions. Um, like prompt engineering was like a thing that people talked about like a year ago. I think that's still like an important skill to develop. So anyway, that's how I rationalize it, is like I'm learning a new skill that's going to benefit me in the years to come. And so it might take a little bit of time, but I think it's worth it. I think it's also like as it relates to in a company, um, I think it just like touches The CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen, said software is eating the world and AI is going to eat software. I think that's right. I think it's like, it's not like, what's the use case for AI in my company? It's like, where are all of the use cases that AI can kind of be this little thing that gives me 5% more effectiveness or efficiency? And so, yeah, I would think about it less as like, I'm doing an AI project this quarter. And it's more of like, I'm doing 20 AI things this month. And like, they're all these tiny little things. That's how I've like at least been playing with it, is like, it doesn't need to be this like one big thing, but it's like a bunch of these little things stitching together. And that becomes quite interesting.
Well, and to your point on AI software, I've been talking about this probably since 2021, but we talked about systems of record originally.
Mm-hmm.
That was the place to build. You're sticky, you're everything, blah, blah, blah. Then we went to systems of engagement. This is where the users actually log in. Therefore, it's more valuable because they're seeing your screen on a daily basis. But I think where we go with AI eating software is systems of intelligence, where the humans actually step back and set the strategy and set the goals and let it do its thing. And all the software, whether it's application layer, whether it's infrastructure layer, is kind of in service of that. I think we've also had this decade of investing in data warehouses where we're piping structured and unstructured data from all different places into the central repository. But the problem with the way all of our systems are architected today is then we have to have ETL and reverse ETL to go and like map it back to different schemas. But in the reality, you can just build an intelligent brain on top, let users based off of their role and function query it, tell it to do stuff, and then have it go and execute. I think that's kind of the natural evolution of where the stuff all goes. I think we're pretty far from that world. I mean, even with what you were saying on using it as a thought partner, like ChatGPT as a thought partner, right? Go to market is fascinating to me because it's so subjective. What you
Yeah,
like as a title for your blog post might be completely different than what I would pick, but neither of those opinions are rooted in data. And that's the
totally.
other thing that's so funny to me, is especially dealing with so many marketers, we have a lot of data driven aspects of marketing. Copywriting is not one of them. And I think that the way AI moves this along is also bringing some data and analytics to copy in general, because it's all in service of pipeline, right? It's lead gen, it's all that, whether it's an awareness piece, whether it's an ad. And I think that's something I'm excited to see, but I haven't seen yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think the other thing kind of tangentially related is like, I generally think that AI doesn't have an opinion in and of itself. Like, it's not naturally creative. I think it's very good at like taking instructions and running with them. And so I hope maybe I'm like trying to be protective of the human race here. But like, I think we have an edge still on like coming up with creative ideas and
Yeah.
telling it, okay, these are the instructions. And then it can go run that experiment on your behalf, but like, you have to be the brain behind it to say like, this is the outcome that I want, these are the inputs that you should use, here's how you should think about like building messaging, here's some examples of what good looks like, and then the AI can go replicate that. But I think that I think it's spot on, and I think it's also like, yeah, there's something interesting too about like training a model and like having a digital coworker that like starts to learn my taste and is like able to learn like what type of article titles I do like, and like that might be different than somebody else that might be on my own team, and that's kind of interesting from like the sales perspective. It's like, write in a sales email in my style, versus like feed it the backlog of emails I've sent over the last 6 months, to like learn my style of writing. I think that's something we're like, I haven't really seen that much at all yet. But that's also, I think, where if I were to kind of guess, in the next year or two, like, we'll probably see more like kind of tailored digital coworkers that are like kind of just following us around. And we have like several little coworkers that kind of just help us do these tasks every day. I hope.
Oh, for sure. That's coming for absolutely. We have a similar concept in Tofu of tone, so it can learn anybody's style and tone. And I fed it. Wrote a weekly newsletter for almost 4 years, and completely written by me. I gave it a bunch of examples from that. And then I had it start writing me content now for Tofu. And it was so funny because I was reading it and I'm like, oh my God, I do use the word folks a lot. I grew up in the Midwest. Like, that's totally how I sound. I would have never thought about that, but now seeing it as kind of the mirror of me, it's kind of crazy how well it learns and just starts to pick up on little nuances like that. So I think we definitely in 2025 for sure a lot more tools are going to start to adopt that stuff.
Yeah, I think so. I was an avid reader of your blog, by the way.
Ah,
I
I
was a
loved
fan.
it.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. It's the
Someday
best.
I'll get back to it.
Yeah,
Need some more hours in the
it
day.
was like 3 ideas or something, right?
Yeah, it was called Three Things. It was
Three
literally three
things.
ideas a week and kind
Yeah,
of why now, how to build it, that kind of thing.
yeah, I remember it was the best. It was also like when I was ideating, so it was like very helpful of like, oh, that's a cool idea. There's an interesting market. There's like a weird, boring business, but a massive opportunity, that sort of stuff. That's what I
I
remember about it.
love weird, unsexy stuff,
Yeah,
weird
totally.
niches, all that.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's cool. I think that's right. I've played around with just like Claude, Sonnet 3.5, and they have projects. And so you can kind of
Yeah.
upload, here's some former, here's 5 of my last blogs. Here's a prompt or here's a recording of a call, generate a blog. And it's like, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's
Is
not
it?
amazing. It's probably not something I'm going to ship, but it's like, it's an 8 out of 10.
Nice.
And I don't know, in 2 years, it's probably going to be a 9 out of 10, or 10 out of 10. Like, I think, I don't know. We'll see.
As somebody who's writing right now as kind
Yeah.
of a major channel for you,
Yeah.
what happens in a couple of years if it gets really, really good?
I don't know. I think that my general thesis actually is media is going to become more important. It's why I'm like posting on LinkedIn and writing a blog and investing in that space, because I think that attention in media, people in an AI era, there's going to be a lot of content generated by AI. And I think a lot of that would actually just be fluff, and you can kind of smell the AI breath on it. You see that in like a LinkedIn comment. It's like, that's an automated AI comment. So I think like my thesis is people with a unique point of view will actually rise up even more. And there will be kind of this power law dynamic where like those people will get more attention, not less. That's my thinking. And I don't know, in 2 years or 4 years or something, like if AI can write as good as a human, it's like entertaining and like, I don't know. Yeah, fun copy. Like, I don't know what happens then. Maybe it's just leads to podcasts and live webinars that AI can't do. And then in another 2 years, that will get cannibalized. But generally, I think it's like content is really hard for AI to be like really entertaining and have a unique point of view. So I feel safe, but who knows?
I agree. It's not good at originality. It's also not good at trust building. And I think that's the one thing that really aligns with your strategy is even if you do leverage AI to help you in many ways in the future, you first have to build trust with an audience. And once you build trust and have their ear or their eyes or whatever you're looking for, then it's a little bit easier to fill in gaps with AI, but it can't build trust for you.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's like, yeah, I use AI like in writing. Like I'll drop a piece into Claude or OpenAI and just say like, what's confusing, what doesn't make sense, what's missing,
Good
show me
editor.
grammatical errors. Yeah, it's a great editor. So I think there's a place for it, but it's like instead of hiring an editor, I can just use an LLM. Yeah, but I think just like generating a piece of content cold, not so much. Maybe if it's like SEO stuff, I think that can make sense. If you're trying to do like high volume stuff, or again, like generating a first draft, here's 1,000 words. Okay, cool. Now I can just spend 15 minutes like tweaking some stuff or adding some specific examples, kind of beefing it up, putting it into my voice a little bit more, and then shipping it. I think that could work. If I was a marketer, like that would definitely be a channel I would test out or a way to use it.
It can get you, especially if you've given it enough input, it can get you 80% of the way there. I definitely see that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, this is super fun. I got to hop. Let's do part 2 very, very soon. We only got to like 2 topics, so let's do another one.
Sounds great. Yeah. Thanks for the time, Elaine. Appreciate it.
Super fun. Thanks, Brendan.
Okay. See ya.